Hi guys, Shane here, Flight Simmer. Welcome to another FSElite video. Today we have a special guest come along, which is Otmar from Wing42, the sole developer of the Lockheed Vega 5 that's been recently released into beta. So welcome along and thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm very glad to be here. And hello all.
Could you tell us a little bit about Wing42 and also why did you start developing for flight sim?
Yeah, man, I started flight simming when I was about 13, 14 years old. And so that was with FS5 back then. Wow. And I've been into the development of aircraft, in particular for flight simulator, ever since FSX, pretty much. So that's many years of development on my back. But so far, I've never released anything up to the Lockheed Vega. It was more like a fun thing for me to do, try different things, and yeah, just see how far I can take it. And now I felt like this is something that I really want to do for a living, because it's so enjoyable and so rewarding just to see especially these old aircraft come to life in the flight simulator over a period of development. And so yeah, I started with Wing42 about 2 years ago, started developing the Lockheed Vega, and yeah, this is now my ever since my full-time job, trying to get this aircraft up to speed.
Why the Lockheed Vega? Why did you choose this aircraft to be your first release?
I've always been interested in golden era of aviation and the aircraft of the time. I don't know, I can't even say why. I just love these rattling engines, radial engines that would, you know, break down after 50 hours or so. It's always been a fascination for me just to get these old aircraft to life. And the Lockheed Vega is, I love the shape of this aircraft. That's pretty much what it came down to. I really enjoyed like the clean shape of this teardrop shape, very aerodynamic for the time. And then reading up on the aircraft just confirmed that it's such an advanced aircraft for its time. I don't think people actually have a grasp as to what a jump aviation took with this aircraft. Amelia Earhart flew it across the Atlantic Ocean with the Lockheed Vega 5B. You've got Captain Doolittle flew the Vega. You've got, of course, Wiley Post, who flew the Lockheed Vega around the world twice and reached up to 50,000 feet of altitude in a Lockheed Vega. And yeah, all of that due to the ingenious designs of the engineers of Lockheed. And so I think that this aircraft was always like underrepresented in the sim, and I felt like it needs like a proper representation. And it's a fun plane to fly.
With the Vega, it's very systems detailed. What was the thought behind developing an aircraft of the golden era, but actually putting a lot of detail behind it all, systems-wise?
I think that essentially comes down to what A2A simulations did with the Boeing Strada Cruiser when it came out. I don't know if you can remember that.
Yeah.
A2A released the Strada Cruiser. Oh gosh, how long ago is that now? Like 10 years or something?
Yeah,
8 years?
I think
something like that, right? And that was, at least to me, that was an absolute game changer when it comes to simulation and to flight simulation, because they for the first time added something, systems of consequence, where if you don't handle your engine correctly, well, then you're in trouble, right? You need to watch your oil pressure, you need to watch out for your engine temperatures, and if you don't, well, then the thing will go up in flames. And I always felt that they kind of A2A moved into a different direction now with lots of general aviation aircraft coming out, and I always felt like they leave a big gap behind of like these old vintage aircraft from the golden era of aviation in particular. That just don't that have like this level of depth to it. And so I set out to fill that gap.
No, one of the features and system-wise that I've seen is for the Vega 5 is the Prop-O-Tronics physics engine. Could you elaborate on more of what that is?
Yeah, so the Prop-O-Tronic physics engine is essentially a set of algorithms that govern the physics of Lockheed Vega systems. So to give you an example, I just implemented the oil system in the last update, or let's say updated the oil system in the last update. And so the Prop-O-Tronic engine is calculating relationships between different components of the engine. For instance, the heat exchange. So if you can imagine that when your engine is running, your cylinder head is heating up over time. And this heat gets then conducted to the cylinder barrels, where the airflow is taking parts of this heat away through convection. And you've got oil being sprayed from the bottom to the pistons in order to cool it down as well. Yeah. So taking heat away from that. And so the Prop-O-Tronic physics engine is governing all these different relationships. And so with the heat exchange module, it's absolutely bananas. I've got about 50 components that have physical properties like mass, like volume, heat capacity. And then these 50 components are linked with each other. I've got about 250 currently, 250 different relationships between these different components. And each relationship is being calculated at real time in order to get a proper, to calculate like the exchange of energy in the system. So that's what Prop-O-Tronic essentially does. It's like it's a set of algorithms that governs the physics of various aspects of the engine, and that includes electrical system, that includes the lubrication, it includes the heat, and then the part that I'm working on right now is the combustion for that.
Okay. And what's been the kind of feedback from the community so far in terms of reception of the Vega?
I would say that's overwhelmingly positive. I mean, of course, there's always some issues, like there's always things that need to be where I need to give some support. A certain panel doesn't work or something. But overall, it's been. I released the Vega, and I was super anxious. Like when I put it out there, I was sitting there at my computer, looking email box, inbox open, looking at the forums, and nothing. It's because I think that I postponed the release half a year late with my release, and I took this extra time to make sure it does what I promise it will do.
Yep.
And so I think that part of the reason why I get a very positive feedback so far is because it's a fun aircraft to fly as it is. Mm-hmm. I've got systems in place. I mean, not everything works perfectly, obviously, but I've got systems in place that actually show where it's going, and I think like my customers can really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that stands out is during the development, being an early release, the information that you've been putting up on the website, it's very transparent of where the Vega is and where it's up to, which is nice to see, because you generally don't see that in the flight sim community these days. We see it in other genres of gaming, but I haven't really seen it too much in flight sim. So.
And I wonder why that is. I enjoy every single interaction that I've got with my customers. I enjoy putting this information out there, and I enjoy like the feedback that I get. It is so precious to me. Like every single time that I get an email saying, "Well, I just had this flight where I don't know why, but for instance, my airspeed indicator didn't come on. So I landed again. I had to look around, and turns out that my pitot tube was clogged up. And it's like these little stories that I get, and then combined with, well, maybe you should look into implementing this or this or this. It's been such a great experience for me, and just to get like these different this feedback put into this product. It's been a lot of fun.
So with the feedback that you are speaking about, have you taken any of that in consideration, and will some of those make future updates in the Vega from the feedback you've gotten?
Always. I mean, that was the whole point of getting the Vega out in early access, was in order to have the feedback that I get from the early adopters implemented into the plane. I mean, what's the point of having early access if you then don't take the the feedback that you get into consideration? That's absolutely nuts. Yeah. And so I mean, that's like the core component of that. And I mean, there's many examples for that. For the next version, for instance, I reworked the cowling. I mean, that's just, of course, aesthetics, but a few customers pointed out that the nose of the Vega should be more roundish and should close a little bit more to get like this iconic, I don't know, look of the aircraft, right? And so I went through my I don't know, hundreds of reference photos, and I felt like they actually have a point. And so I started redesigning this whole thing. And so in the next update, there will be a completely overhauled cowling.
Yeah.
I take this feedback that I get very, very seriously, and I try to come up with a solution for the things that are suggested. Sometimes I have to say, well, this is just, it's not worth it. Because I mean, every single change that I do costs time, and whatever time I put into, I don't know, like redesigning the cowling, for instance, I have to take out from simulating the engine at that moment in time. And I mean, it's always a matter of judging what's more important.
And during the development phase of the Vega, what would you say would be some of the toughest challenges you've had along the way so far?
Yeah, exactly what I just mentioned. I think it's the time. It's just the time. I mean, of course, there's always obstacles, and everyone who ever tried to program even a simple hello world in any given language knows the obstacle that come with programming in general. And the same is true for every single aspect of this aircraft design. I mean, look, for instance, aerodynamics, right? I spent a lot of time reading up on aerodynamics, reading up on the actual flight model of the platform in order to be able to produce a flight model that fares reasonably well. I think that the Vega flies very, very well. There's still a couple of little issues, but I think overall it's been all right. So of course that's an obstacle, right? I mean, that's another month that I need to spend doing something that I'd rather not do, which is just reading up on things. But overall, it's just a matter of timing, and that's been 2 years of development, and it will be a couple more months before I've got a version 1.0 released. Maybe one thing that I should mention is the sound, because as you know, the sound set that's included in the Vega right now is more or less a placeholder.
Yes.
And I would say that this is one of the areas where I'm not very confident in, because I'm not a sound engineer. I don't know much about how to get the aircraft sound well, and so I'm trying to get like outside expertise in order to help me out with this. Mm-hmm. And I mean, but that goes for having hurdles in the way. But yeah, that's coming as well. So don't worry. At some point, the Vega will sound kick-ass as well.
And nowadays, we're seeing more and more people taking a look at X-Plane and developers releasing products for X-Plane. Could you see that the Vega 5 maybe popping over to X-Plane at any stage?
Yeah, I mean, I would be a fool if I would ignore that. There's currently a huge shift from the dying FSX platform over to X-Plane, and of course for good reason. I must say I've never ever looked into X-Plane, and it's partially it's just my convenience because I'm so accustomed to the Microsoft platform. Partially, it's also just a time issue. I mean, right now I'm working full time on getting the Vega up and running. I don't have the time to actually look into developing for a new platform. But yeah, and I will definitely explore avenues as to how to port the Vega over to X-Plane in the future. Whether it's possible, I can't make any predictions right now because, as I said, I haven't even looked into it.
Yeah. And at this stage of the development for the Vega, when would you expect the final release of the product to be out?
I'm currently working on a schedule of about 1 to 2 months between each update. So the next update for the Vega will be in mid-September, probably.
Yep.
And that will hopefully include a full set of calculations for the engine, so the combustion part of it, and the fuel system will receive an overhaul. Also, I'm working on my own sound engine, so there will be sound included for like all these different switches and levers. So there will finally be, we'll add a little bit to the immersion factor there. Engine sound probably will take a little bit longer, and so overall, I'm hesitant to say, but I'm aiming for December for the final release.
Okay.
Maybe I shouldn't call it final release, for the release of 1.0, because I would still hope. Yeah, I would still hope that even after the release, I would put out updates, obviously, and hopefully. I mean, it depends a little bit on how much time I have available. I've got so many good suggestions of, for instance, there's a Vega version out with floats. I'd love to have a Vega on floats, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Yep. Yeah. It's always a little bit of a balancing act between that.
And when the Vega is finally complete and the release build is out, do you have any future plans in mind for what will be the next project for Wing42?
Oh yeah, of course. No, and look, I will stick with roughly this era of aviation, and I said before that I'm not really new to this game, because I was developing aircraft before I started with the Vega, and so what I want to do is to pick up some of these old projects that I have and want to bring them up to speed and implement, for instance, a Propertronic physics engine into these aircraft as well. And in particular, those are the Blériot 11. If you have any clue about that plane?
No, not at all.
So we're going even further back. The Blériot 11 was an aircraft from roughly 1912, I believe it was.
Yep.
And it's one of those light wooden framework with bicycle wheels and canvas on the wings. It had wing warping, so the whole wing would bend instead of ailerons. So there was no control surfaces. Instead, you would warp the whole wing in order to get your roll control. And so this aircraft was developed roughly 1911, 1912, I believe it was, and by Louis Blériot in France. And he was the first to complete an international flight. He flew from France to England, crossing the English Channel.
Right. Yes.
So that's an interesting one.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a very iconic aircraft as well. It's a little bit of a quirky one. So it's more of a little side project, I guess. The bigger one will be a Lockheed Electra. So I will stick with the Lockheeds, and it will be the twin engine Lockheed Electra, which I find is an amazing plane for the time, almost as iconic as the Vega.
Yeah, I was about to say that's another iconic aircraft of the golden era. So, interesting. Yeah. So the future is bright for different projects after the Vega. So,
yeah. But I mean, again, first we need to finish the Vega before I can even look into picking these up again. I mean, otherwise it wouldn't be fair towards my customers, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. The Vega will receive its proper care before I move on to these type of projects.
Yeah. And thank you very much. That concludes all the questions. But before we go, did you have anything that you would like to say to your customers and people in the community about the Vega?
Well, yeah, I would like to say thank you to each and every one of my customers, because I know that early access has a little bit of a bad reputation, especially in the flight sim community, and so I know that that I'm asking a lot by saying, yeah, you know, buy this, and it's not finished yet, but it will be. And I really appreciate the support that I got from all the people that bought the Lockheed Vega, and in particular, man, I love your feedback. I love reading what you have to say. I love reading your experiences. So I want to thank each and every one of my customers for all the awesome feedback that I got on the support. Okay, so that was that. The second one is I want to thank you, Shane, for your awesome coverage of this project. It's much appreciated. I love the videos that you produce. I love the review. I had a lot of fun watching you and Edson fly this plane and comment on it. So thank you for your support as well.
No, you're most welcome. The Vega is a lot of fun to fly, and I'm looking forward to the different builds as they come along and the aircraft's still coming to life. And if you're not familiar with the Vega, I'll leave a link in the description, and I recommend checking out, because it is a lot of fun to fly, and it's if you want an aircraft that's got a lot of systems and also fun to fly and looks great, it would be right up your alley. Thank you very much for watching the video, and stay tuned, and we'll see you on the next FSElite video. Talk to you soon. Cheers. Goodbye.